Good evening, everyone. I'm going to have a better commanding classroom teacher kind of a voice. I'm struggling to get your attention. Maybe Ms. Sergi can teach me how to do that. From the diaphragm, then, we're going to all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for making time to come out and meet with us tonight to talk about a late-breaking opportunity that the school district has. We've obviously, as you know, been moving quickly to try and see if it's possible to take advantage of this opportunity. We've scheduled a series of 3 public meetings. This is the first of those 3 meetings to try and make sure the public is well informed about what's underway, and also to take comments and feedback and questions from the public. What we'll do tonight is, my name is Tom Rogers. I'm the superintendent of the school district. This is an administrative meeting. There are members of the Board of Education in attendance as members of the public to observe, to hear what the public has to say. But I'll be conducting the meeting tonight and doing the presentation and answering questions along with Assistant Superintendent for Business, Dr. Rufo, and our Director of Operations, Mr. Hamilton. So what we'll do tonight is I'll start with a brief presentation to go through some information about the project. We talked about this at the last Board of Education meeting. We've been doing a lot of work since then to try and refine some of the work that we announced at that time. So we have some answers. We've also collected a number of questions online from people who registered for the meeting or who sent in comments and questions. We won't read the comments out loud necessarily. And what we've done is there's a lot of redundancy in the questions, so we've kind of grouped them thematically, and we'll respond. So some of those will be in the presentation. We'll just respond to the questions that have come in already. And then we'll take some questions from the audience. And when we get a little closer to that time, I'll just go through some ground rules so that we can keep this moving along, and also to make sure that we get to as many people as possible so that everybody gets a turn. So with that said, I'm going to hopefully operate the clicker correctly and take you through this little presentation. So when this opportunity was presented to the school district, we saw the potential for this project to provide students with more educational opportunities. Certainly we recognize that this is a recreational asset that's used by the community, and if it became something that was part of the school district, that there would still be heavy community use by essentially the same children that attend the school district. And we also see that because those are children that attend the school district, the safety and security of that property has an impact on those children, and we saw an opportunity to do more in the way of safety and security there. Obviously, that's been a big priority of the school district for the last 3 years, and any place that we see an opportunity to keep our kids safe, we want to be attentive to that. So the big picture item here is that there's a 35-acre piece of property. It is the cleared portion of the Stillwell Fields Park. So there are 270 acres that are wooded property. Those would remain county property. They are not part of this process for consideration. They would remain a preserve. They would remain accessible and unchanged by whatever activity occurs. One of the requirements that the county had for the transfer of the property was that any existing use permits would transfer over with it. That's important to groups like Syosset Soccer or Syosset Baseball or Syosset Lacrosse, who all have these long-standing existing use permits for large portions of the time that the park is available, so that they are able to offer their programs to the students the children who are in those programs. As you may know, several years ago, right before the pandemic, the county had earmarked and passed legislation that would appropriate about $3 million in bonded funds to make improvements to the property. like everything else at the beginning of the pandemic, that appeared to have been put on hold. Now, as we are hopefully, and no one hopes more than I, pulling out of the pandemic sometime soon, those funds have been reconsidered, and as part of this arrangement, the county would transfer those $3 million in funds to the school district to be used as part of the funding for the construction. So, and then lastly, obviously, we would take over the ongoing maintenance of the property as we do with the 10 other campuses that we have. It would essentially function as an additional 35 acres appended to the 99 or so acres that these two buildings sit on right now. So would increase the size of this particular property by about 30%. So while we think of Stillwell as being an athletics property, and I still think that the primary function that will go on there will be a lot of athletics, both school district athletics and then the existing athletics uses, we've been imagining some of the opportunities that it might create. You may know that years ago the district had an in-district field trip opportunity where elementary students would go to the high school to do some environmental and outdoor education. We're imagining that this would be a property that actually lent itself to that even better because of the proximity of Stillwell Woods next door. And I could see, for those who don't know, my previous position was as superintendent of Nassau BOCES, the tremendous outdoor and environmental education program there. And that program in particular leverages ComSet as a park opportunity for students to get a better impression of the natural world. This would provide a similar kind of setting, but without as much travel required. And again, because it would be in district, it'd be something that we would be able to tailor specifically to our own students. And that property, because of its size and its geography, just presents a number of really great opportunities for learning. So we also thought about the arts programs here, and one of the design features, not an expensive one, more of just a thoughtful addition, is to put a lawn in and have at one end of that lawn a little concrete pad that could support some sort of a stage so that students could do outdoor performances. We have a thriving arts and education program here, and this would be an opportunity for the performing arts students to take advantage of this as well. I'm imagining, what are those called? Blankets. I'm imagining blankets spread out on a lawn in front of the stage so that you could watch students. If you're not familiar with it, the students at the high school here once a year do something they call the Bard-a-thon, which I know is going to be hard to understand with this mask on, but this is where they perform endlessly Shakespeare plays all day, all night, and they just rotate in and out and hand the scripts to one another, and you might have 3 Othellos in the space of an hour. But it's those kinds of things that I think make high school quirky and fun, and would be also something that could be taken advantage of here. And then lastly, we were inspired by something that is being done in Letchworth State Park. That's just south of Rochester. And in conjunction with one of the school districts there, they've created a sensory walk with a particular focus on students who have sensory issues. And they're calling theirs an autism walk, but I think we would rather call ours a sensory walk. And this would be an opportunity to really have students explore the physical world, the physical nature of the natural world, but with a specific focus and intention on students who have a different perceptive processing issues. Obviously, so those are some adjunct kinds of uses for the property. The main use would be as athletic facilities. The opportunity here is really to take the existing grass fields and convert several of them to turf fields. The advantages of turf fields is that you can play on them endlessly without really degrading them, and that creates a lot of opportunities. And for the high school, it will alleviate a lot of traffic jams that we currently alleviate by busing students off campus to other properties. So the disadvantage of natural turf fields, grass fields, is that they have to be allowed to rest between uses. And so a lot of what the athletics team does here is rotate the practices around the various fields that are here, so no one field gets too much use and it has a chance to recover from the uses. And the way the fields are laid out here on this property, the outfields for the softball fields are also used as soccer fields, lacrosse fields, practice fields. And so managing all of that is sometimes a challenge. So I've asked Mr. Cronin to just talk a little bit about, Mr. Cronin is our athletic director, to talk a little bit about some of the challenges, how we currently solve those challenges, how they might be alleviated somewhat if we had additional turf fields to use. So, Mr. Cronin.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. There are a multitude of advantages to these fields across the street for our athletic program. As you know, we have a robust program currently. With the state of the COVID situation that we're in right now, we have overlapping games, overlapping practices. We do have a turf field. We were fortunate enough to get that this year. And in the past, we have traveled to outside venues, which, as you said, creates travel time, delay time, cost to the district, and really reduces the amount of time that the parents and the kids can be home on our campus enjoying a game. The addition of these fields also will create gender equity to where we can have 2 games going at the same time. Again, we walk across the street. We don't have to be bused somewhere else. Baseball and softball are key here, I think, because we lose a lot of time and a lot of hours with our grounds crew working on the fields to try and make them, to prepare them for our games. And you know what happens when it rains on the clay. It gets very difficult to play, and it could be a day or two, which backs everything up and makes it difficult to complete the season. Additionally, having the fields across the street will allow for longer practice sessions because we don't have to travel, which allows for greater time for the kids to get back to the school, home, studying, doing what they need to do after practice. For our parents, they know they're going to one location. They're coming back to the high school. They're going across the street to Stillwell. They don't have to go looking for Candiac Park or Scio Woodbury Park. They know where they're parking. They know where they're going, and they can see their children play. We will not have to cancel as many games having a number of turf fields. They're easy on, easy off. We step on, we step off. We don't have to spend the time repairing the fields like we do here. As you said earlier, these fields need to rest. They don't get the rest. They begin in August, and we end in June, and then over the summer, teams participate on them as well. And as you know, you can put as much grass seed down as you want. If you don't give the time for the grass seed to germinate and grow, you're never really going to get the field to be repaired. This alleviates that problem. Additionally, across the street for our teams, the varsity, the JV, our middle schools will enjoy some opportunity to play on a little bit better fields than they have at the present time. They can kind of shift down, and our grounds crew will benefit by being able to concentrate on other activities to brighten up the place and make it, concentrate on other opportunities as opposed to, working on lining the fields, which takes a lot of time. The fields will be lined. We won't have to do that anymore as much. So really, for our overall program, I could stay up here all night, and you probably don't want to hear me all night. I'd be happy to speak to anybody who wants to. We just feel it's such a great opportunity for the community. I know my staff is excited. I'm excited. We've had scenarios during COVID now where we've really had to juggle schedules, and our coaches are so flexible in doing such that with one turf field, we're on, we're off, cuts down the time, we're able to use it. This will allow for a more vigorous practice and a more robust program, eliminating weather, mostly eliminating downtime. So I just think it's a great opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Cronin.
Thank you.
One thing that's been identified as a priority by the community groups that use the facilities is the time of day that they're used. Obviously, they're used into the evening. The lighting that is used there now is portable lighting that is powered by diesel generators. For lots of reasons, that's not ideal for kids and not ideal for the environment. So this would replace that with a permanent fixture, lighting fixtures, low scatter LED fixtures. So they're low energy use because they're LED, and they're also the newer technology, so there's a lot less spread from the lighting. And then one of the ideas that we thought about and really kind of hit home for me after we reopened school, we were seeing the track that was recently completed here getting a lot of use from the senior citizens in our community as a walking path. And in talking with a few, they said that so much safer than walking in a neighborhood. Even if it's a quiet neighborhood, there's still traffic that you have to be attentive to. And whereas when you come here and you use the track, you need worry about nothing. But unfortunately, we've had to close that during the day because we do have gym classes on the field 9 periods out of the day, and so we can't have the adults mixing with the students on the field. And the idea occurred to us that the property could be ringed, Stillwell property could be ringed with a walking path, a paved asphalt walking path that would then be accessible during the school day, because I don't anticipate there will be a lot of gym class, phys ed class use of this property, and that would provide an asset for the seniors to continue doing what they had been doing for the 6 months prior to us reopening, taking advantage of that. And it would have the collateral benefit of providing for a handicapped accessible way of getting to some of the fields that are in the back part of the property. So currently, if you're somebody with some mobility issues and you want to go watch a grandson play in the far corner, it's really hard to get to across a lot of bumpy grass. This would make it possible for someone to get into more parts of the property. And similarly, if someone had to be evacuated from the property, it would provide for a smooth pathway on which to have an emergency vehicle extract somebody from the property. So for a number of reasons, that path will present itself as a walking and running path, and I'm sort of tickled by the fact that it just sort of works out to be a mile perfectly, but I think it ends up supporting a lot of different uses. So we do anticipate, as we've done with all of the school district's properties, focusing on safety and security. We would put some surveillance infrastructure into place, some very low-level lighting around some of the dark parts of the property. The lit fields would be in the center, and there will be enough scatter from them to light the parts of the park that are nearby. But that scatter hopefully won't go to the very edges of the park, and there might need to be some low-level lighting there to make that a little bit safer. There's a restroom already on site that have been in and inspected. It does need some improvements. The fixtures are in good shape, but the plumbing could use some assistance. And we had also the idea that while there are children using or participating in youth events, there may be younger siblings that aren't old enough yet to participate as well, and a small playground facility on site would be something that a parent would be able to take advantage of to keep the youngest child distracted while the slightly older child is participating in an event, and then they'd all be able to leave simultaneously. One of my observations of the park is that there are 3 very small trees in the middle of the park, but they're situated in such a way that they're neither parallel to Southwoods Road nor parallel to the south access road in the park. And so with a lot of rectangular fields and these 3 trees that don't line up with anything, they make it hard to locate fields. We would want to replace the trees, but replace them in a manner that provides shade in someplace strategic so that there could be picnic table underneath the shade tree, but maybe screen parts of the property from other parts of the property, but make it also possible to use the fields that are there more efficiently. So this is a bird's eye view. This is from the south side of the park. So on the left is Southwoods Road headed north-south and the existing parking lot. On the right is the entrance to the larger part, the 270-acre Stillwell Woods property. And this shows the features of what would be constructed. So in the upper left-hand corner, that's currently 2 fields that are fenced in. It would be reoriented and used as 3 grass fields. So those fields would be graded to try and improve some of the issues that are there with the fields being uneven, and it would be reseeded with grass. In the center of the property, again, to avoid having light scatter too far towards the perimeter, would be the turf fields that are created, 2 regulation-sized turf fields that are oriented east-west. Those are immediately adjacent to the parking lot. And you see running between them a concrete pathway, again, for people with mobility issues to be able to better access the middle of the park, and also a place where someone could set a folding chair and watch a game if they wanted to. And then that kind of comes to a T, and at the T are 3 smaller fields. These would function essentially the way the 3 small fields that do now that are immediately adjacent to the parking lot. Moving just down from that and a little bit further to the right, there's an existing lacrosse field that's parallel to the roadway. It'd be rotated so that it would be perpendicular to 2 of the baseball fields. And what that would do is free up a triangular-shaped parking lot at the bottom that would add about 100 parking spaces. I haven't experienced this myself, but I've been informed that what happens with the parking along the existing roadway is one side is head-in parking, and then when that fills up, people parallel park on the opposite side of the road, and it leaves only width for a single car. So if one car is headed in and one car is headed out, a lot of honking ensues. So kidding aside, that's also a safety concern, because if it's ever necessary to access the Stillwell Woods property to aid a person who might be needing emergency assistance, having that area choked and only have one lane where traffic can't get by ends up creating a hazard. By removing that parking off of the roadway and onto a dedicated parking lot, you'd increase the amount of parking that's available, but you would also remove that blockage that could have a security issue on the road space. So we're showing a lawn and a playground along the south side of the property. The tan area is the space that would be reserved for a playground, and then the lawn that we would put the blankets on so you could watch theater performances at the bottom. One advantage of this property that originally I thought was a disadvantage was the existence of a recharge basin that's at the top center part of the property. There's it's a Town of Oyster Bay recharge basin, and because turf fields by regulation need a place to drain, often you have to construct dry wells underneath those turf fields. That's how the turf field out here is constructed, to accept the rainwater and let it percolate back into the ground more slowly. Because of the drainage recharge basin, there's already a natural recharge there, and so the water just needs to be directed to the recharge basin, and that spares the large expense of creating dry well and drainage facilities underneath each of these turf fields. So if I haven't mentioned it yet, the baseball and softball fields would have artificial synthetic turf infields, and that is, as Mr. Cronin said, so that the clay infields that often create problems after rainstorms would be playable more quickly after the storms occur. And then a regulation-size multi-sport field, we're thinking primarily lacrosse, would be created adjacent to the parking lot, and this one would be fenced at the ends. Obviously, a lacrosse ball moving at high speed is a dangerous object, so we'd want to be able to corral those behind the goals where the ball's being thrown hard. So that gives a quick overview of the property. The road along the south is in poor shape and would have to be repaved. The parking lot is in mediocre shape, but probably just needs to be repaired and maybe seal coated. It's not nearly in as bad a shape as the road along the bottom. So the itemized construction estimates, I won't read all of these. They're apparent, and this will be posted online after tonight so that folks have access to it. But we're working with the district's architects and engineers who we walked the property with them. They gave us some initial cost estimates. And obviously, these things get refined over time. And as we've learned doing a lot of construction over the past 5 years, you have estimates, and then at the time you construct, sometimes things come in a little higher than others, and sometimes things come in a little lower. You hope that they all balance out. We did do some estimating of ongoing operating costs, and we've gotten some estimates from our insurance company, and The staff here have done a little bit of estimating as well. We did reach out to the town to try and get some information from them. I will say that the town has been marvelously cooperative, but the way they maintain their data doesn't lend itself to being broken out by individual parks. It's all just in a single fund for the town. And so while they would have been happy to give us that information, it just doesn't exist in exactly that way. But we were able to look at this and come up with some pretty solid estimates for what we think that this would cost the school district on an ongoing basis. So what will the cost be to taxes? There's two costs here. Obviously, the initial construction costs and then the ongoing maintenance costs. So the initial construction costs would have funding from several sources. First, from the Nassau County grant that I mentioned earlier. The district has $2 million from two different mitigation payments from developers in the community that this would be a way for those mitigation payments to essentially live on for multiple years instead of being consumed in a single year and then disappearing. So by buying something of lasting value, those two mitigation payments that are in reserves right now would be an asset that the community would have for time to come. And then the balance of the difference would be raised through bonds. So the district has debt, the district retires debt. The amount of debt that's about to be retired is greater than the amount of debt that would be taken on, and so the net impact to property taxes would be down slightly. So school districts look at these as opportunities to do the work that you need to do and opportunities to do something that don't change the tax structure overall. So by taking advantage of these opportunities, you keep things level, and yet you're able to do additional work in the district. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one data point on this slide. When we did the phase 2 construction project, a number of people said that it was helpful when we calculated what the cost would be per $10,000 of taxes. So obviously there are a range of home values in the community, and that means there's a range of taxes that people pay. But everyone can say, well, if you pay $10,000 in taxes, it would be about $23 a year. If you pay $20,000 in taxes, it would be $46 a year. It's just a way of trying to give someone a thumbnail approximation of what the impact would be. So these are some of the questions we've collected already, and then I'll do some ground rules for live questions, and then we'll all go home and see our families. So what happens to the existing 270-acre preserve? It remains. It's not transferred as property. It remains a park. It remains under the control and supervision of the county. It's unaffected. Which schools will use Stillwell? So as I mentioned earlier, we're excited about the idea of restarting these in-district field trip programs, environmental field trip programs that we used to do, and taking advantage of that. I'm imagining that will be mostly elementary schools. And we're imagining that any student who takes advantage of the district athletics program would find a way to take advantage of this. Clearly there's more proximity to Southwoods Middle School than there is to HBT, but I'm also imagining that just as we bus kids from HBT to Southwoods now for our in-district games, we often compete Southwoods versus HBT in lacrosse and soccer, etc. This would be the natural location for those kinds of games. And if there are days when the natural turf fields at HBT are in poor shape because of weather, this is only a bus ride away for those students from HBT to be able to take advantage of these fields that really are very resistant to weather difficulties. Who has access to the property? Can it be restricted to Syosset groups? How will access be prioritized? One of the contingencies in the arrangement with the county is that it has to be accessible to all of the people that it's accessible to now. Seeing who uses it now, it's primarily the groups that have the usage permits for the property now. So how will access be prioritized? The hierarchy of priorities will be as follows. School district uses, because it's now school district property. So our athletics program, these in-district field trips, the use of the property for whatever functions the school district is going to use would take first priority. Second priority would be the existing usage permits that have to transfer with the property. I don't foresee a lot of overlap between those two because the community groups that use the property now for sports have essentially designed their timeframes around our athletics programs. In other words, they need kids to finish the practices that they have with the school district before they can go do the club program that they have with any of these club groups. So right around the time that we're wrapping up would be about the time that those usage permits start up. And then those existing usage permits would have next claim because they transfer with the property. And then only for the amounts of time that the property isn't spoken for would there be the opportunity for someone to seek an additional usage permit. And that process would be managed by the school district as we do with all 10 of our facilities. We have community use of facilities. We have a policy for how that's done. There's a department. We do charge for the cost of security. We charge back to the groups that take advantage of it. If there's an unusual amount of dependence on custodial, or if it results in custodial overtime, we charge that back as well. And at the very least, I anticipate that that's how this would be done. We would probably look at whether there are any additional costs that would be incurred by community use of that facility, and again, try to find a way to make sure that it's a great asset to the community, but also to make sure that the costs of operating it are underwritten. Who's responsible for maintenance and insurance? It would be the school district, as it is for all of our other properties. We have a grounds crew that maintains all 10 of our campuses. Now they would add this to the properties that they would have to do mowing for. The less natural turf there is there, the less mowing that it requires. And as Mr. Cronin pointed out, one of their big jobs is doing lining, and taking that off the plate ends up freeing up some time. And then this will be property that's owned by the school district. It's not leased from or operated on behalf of. It would actually be school district property. What's the timing for improvements to the property? I'm going to ask Mr. Hamilton to talk a little bit about what we see as a potential construction schedule. Things don't happen quickly in the school world, as you saw with the two big construction projects we did here on this campus. But Greg, can you take us through that, please?
Sure. So typically for a capital project, we have our architects complete the schematic design. And then once the schematic design and the plans go up to the state education department, the time varies, but we've seen times of between 36 and 42 weeks at its peak. So that's the time for the state education department to do its review, provide a building permit for us, and then once that part is completed, then the district will work with the architects, the engineers, and we will bid out the projects, review those bids, and the board will review it and award. So all told, it might take somewhere in the neighborhood of 46 weeks from the time the schematic designs are complete until we are prepared to begin discussions with the contractor for any type of capital construction projects.
Thank you. One disadvantage that school districts have that would not attach in this case is we tried very hard to do all of our construction during the 2 summer months. And so there's a tremendous amount of activity in the school construction world. And when there's a lot of demand and limited supply, obviously that becomes a challenge with pricing. There's a lot more flexibility because it's not immediately adjacent to a building that's full of children for when you can schedule this construction. So that may result in some advantageous pricing because the contractors will not be otherwise committed to summer projects. It may also mean that we can time construction so that at least some of it occurs during otherwise disadvantageous months like February and March when property might not get that much use anyway because the weather's not so great. It's a good time to do the construction, like the demolition and grading parts of the construction, so that you might be able to get a jump on things. If you recall the construction timing for the turf field that we did here, we started immediately after school ended in June, and the field itself was ready just in time for the last football game of the season. So if you could take those 4 months and shift them earlier into the year, it might be advantageous for the summer use of this property instead of losing an entire summer on the property. And we're imagining that whenever the construction ends up being done, there's going to have to be some taking advantage of the school district in order to try to honor the usage permits that won't be able to be used because there's a construction project going on. Next question, if the entire county has access to the facilities, then should the county share the expense? So the county is sharing the expense of construction insofar as they're giving us $3 million and whatever 35 acres is worth in North Syosset. The ongoing operating costs will be handled by the district, and to the extent that a lot of the usage permits, to my knowledge, all of the usage permits are Syosset-specific organizations. For the most part, that is an investment back in the community just through a different vehicle. Why the rush to vote now? There's an opportunity because of the school district budget vote. Running a vote is expensive. Running a vote is also complicated because of COVID. As you'll recall, last year we didn't even run a vote. We tried to manage everything through an absentee ballot process. That had its pluses and minuses. This year we're running an in-person vote. Trying to avoid running more than one in-person vote obviously just increases safety and decreases costs. And so we went as fast as we could and just in time for this cycle, but it spares us either waiting a year or incurring additional cost. Why invest in Stillwell instead of investing in the property here? I think a lot of that rests in the answer that Mr. Cronin gave earlier about the ability to be able to cycle through a lot of different programs, a lot of different opportunities simultaneously. There's just simply more space there to be used and easier to be laid out for these kinds of uses. And it leaves the fields here for additional opportunities and grass fields and turf fields instead of just having one. Will juniors still be allowed to park there? Not only is the answer to that yes, but I think we will be able to alleviate some of the problems that juniors experienced in the past while parking there because we would be able to locate some security on site. The one thing we can't do is employ a crossing guard through the district. If we could, there are several places where I would employ a crossing guard tomorrow. But unfortunately, crossing guards must be hired only by Nassau County. And so what we will have, though, is district security on site. What I would like to do is explore, and this is with or without, whether this goes through or not, explore finding a way to make some traffic calming devices at that intersection where the crosswalk is, because there are lots of kids going across there, not just kids who park, but the cross-country team leaves from this campus, crosses the road, goes and runs in the woods, comes back. There's a lot of traffic across the road there, and anything that we could do to slow traffic down to make that a little bit safer for kids and people. I see residents of the community running there as well. So this is all subject to voter approval, and this is a complicated process because there's voter approval here, there's a vote in the county legislature, and then there's a vote in the state legislature. All of those things have to be successful for this to work. So for the school district, it's broken into two propositions. One is the acceptance of the property for the sum of $1, and the second is the raising of the money and the investment in the property. And both propositions have to pass. You can't say yes to getting the property for $1 and then no to spending the money on improving it, or vice versa. So if both pass, it all passes. If one passes and not the other, it's the same as if both failed. So this will be during the regular budget vote. Proposition 1 will be the school budget itself. Proposition 2, Proposition 3. Proposition 4 is the library budget. So there'll be 4 propositions on the ballot. And then I just mentioned voting hours are going to be extended this year by an hour until 10 o'clock p.m. Because the voting date coincides with Jewish holiday. So we'll take some comments and feedback. We're going to follow a process that's similar to what we do with the school board meetings. This is a way of making sure that everyone gets an opportunity to ask their questions, and also, I think, a way to kind of move through quickly. So everyone who wants to come up to the microphone, we'll give you 4 minutes to make your comment or ask questions. If it's comments, thank you very much. If it's questions, what we'll do is I'll accumulate them on my pad, and then when everyone has had a chance to ask their question or make their comment, I'll go back through the questions and answer as many as I can. We've tried to be well prepared for this meeting, but I anticipate that there will likely be questions that we're not prepared to answer right now or that we hadn't thought of, and they'll be good questions. So we will continue to accumulate those questions and publish them in an online FAQ document similar to what we did with the reopening plan, where we held public meetings, we took a lot of questions, and then we worked on the answers afterwards and put the document online. There is on our website a landing page for all things Stillwell, and so as more drawings become available, they'll be posted to the landing page. As the FAQ document gets longer and longer, that will be posted to the landing page as well. And what we're trying to do is make sure that everyone has access to the information they need in order to consider this project and to understand the project and what it is. I would just ask that speakers be courteous to one another, to us. Please respect the time limit so that everybody who wants to speak has a chance to speak. If we get through one round of questioning, and I'll do some responding, and then if there are any other questions, somebody wants to come back for a second time, that's fine, we'll do that, and then I'll wrap things up at the end of the night, and we'll all say goodnight to each other until we see one another again, and hopefully one of these days without masks on. So with that, if you'd like to come to the microphone, just please state your name and where you live.
Good evening. My name is Trish Sergi. I live 20 Calvin Avenue here in Syosset. I'm a little overwhelmed by all the information. I just have more questions than comments, so I'm hoping we can clarify those. We have 11 buildings. I'm just curious if those fields, and we have some large properties, if those can be adjusted to accommodate the teams and all the sports issues that we're having. Also, I'd like to know about other districts that are our size. Do they have such expansive property as we do? And if they don't, how do they manage? And I see that the yearly costs are about $340,000 guesstimated right now. That's a large nut for us to crack, I think. And over time, insurance costs can go up. If we, God forbid, we have another pandemic, how will that affect us later on? And what about other facilities repairs, like classroom trailers, things of that nature? Some are in disrepair. We should focus on those maybe. And also, I just would like to know why the county doesn't do this work to repair the field. I think that's really important for us to ask as a community. We've had it for a long time, and I know that the district, we use it right now for our teams, don't we? And my last question is, if existing contracts for Syosset lacrosse and Syosset baseball and such remain in place, how does that impact practice times after school? If their practice times are after school, would Syosset school teams be able to use those fields in tandem with them? And that's really it. And thank you for entertaining my questions. And have a good night.
Good evening, Brian Moriarty, 38 Parkway Drive, Syosset, New York. Just a few questions. First, I want to thank you. I appreciate the presentation at the last meeting, and this presentation had a lot more details. I just have two questions. The $300,000 per year, is that going to be offset by any contributions from Syosset soccer, Syosset lacrosse, the flag football, taking in any of the use permits, like for the races that get held in the park and things like that, because that might bring the annual cost down. Also, you mentioned in the last presentation that the school district spends a lot of money busing students around. So I assume we'll save that money, and that would be applied to the 343. And then also, how are we going to, I guess, perhaps in the bidding process, address cost overruns? Because $10 million for a project this size seems a little low. Like, if it goes over $10.5 million, how is that going to be handled? And then my last and final comment, we pay a lot of taxes in Syosset, and I feel like $23 per 10,000 to have a great field is a pretty good deal. So as long as we have a great field, we already pay a lot of taxes, so I'm pretty happy with the idea.
Hi, good evening. I'm Laura Schultz, President Residence for More Beautiful Syosset. I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation. Our organization thinks that it's an outstanding project. We particularly appreciate the paved asphalt walking track for seniors that we would be able to use during the day. Regarding the traffic light, I can give you our experience on getting the traffic light at Jackson Avenue at St. Edward's School. That goes back about 12 to 15 years when we worked with legislator Judy Jacobs. The county at that time had a different criteria for putting a traffic light at the site, at the intersection of Jackson Avenue with St. Edward's School. The school got priority. We were able to get Nassau County DPW to do a traffic study that justified the traffic light there because of the traffic going in and out of St. Edward's School. I would think that on Southwoods Road, you have outside here, you have the school, the traffic going in and out of Southwoods School and the administration here. But I would think if you have classes and things going across to Stillwell, I would ask Nassau County DPW to do another traffic study, and I'm sure our legislator Josh Lafazan would advocate for that. Thanks very much.
Hi, Maureen Ahern, 12 Jarvis Avenue, Syosset. I'm a little overwhelmed by all of this too. I'm feeling almost like we're rushing, though I know you guys are doing a lot of work, but it feels like a little bit of pressure for all of us to swallow this so quickly. So I'm wondering, you mentioned that when the proposals were for the high school grounds to be improved, the neighbors didn't like some of those ideas. And I'm wondering how the neighbors on the Stillwell line feel about this. I would hate to go through all of this and then have them not be happy with, some of the proposals. Through many years of attending athletic events at Stillwell, the parking and the entrance and the exit, I don't see that what's being planned right now alleviates the traffic that happens. When one game ends and another game starts at the same time, and 40 families are trying to come and go at the same time, it's just always been a nightmare, and it doesn't look like the new plan really solves that. So I'm hoping that can be considered. And I was involved a lot in the last facilities stuff, and a lot of talk about arts and music and theater and the facilities that they need. And now we're spending another $5 million on more athletic stuff. So I'm wondering, have we thought about how we can share some of the funds with the facilities inside here, like this room, that the arts and music kids really need some attention to that stuff too. So I appreciate the thoroughness of all of this and the chance that you're giving us to think about all this. So thank you.
Good evening, Tony Elitzi, 33 Calvin Avenue. Thank you, Dr. Rogers, for a thorough presentation. And as my friend from Parkway mentioned, responding to a lot of the questions that arose at the last meeting, and probably since that time that you've received. The one question that I have is with regard to this sale, this transfer of property. I mean, it really sounds like Syosset is going to own this property from here on out. But where I'm a little confused is the fact that Nassau County is stipulating, but it has to be accessible to all residents. So it's kind of like, you know, if you sold your house and said, well, I'm selling you my house, but my uncle likes to come over and have a barbecue every now and then, you got to still let him come over and have a barbecue. I mean, that doesn't really happen. So I'm kind of wondering, what are the hooks do they have, and what other forces are they exerting on this property? And basically, what are our freedoms with this property? So let's say, for instance, there was a time that if we needed to build an educational facility, perhaps we wanted to replace a school and we needed something temporarily, or we swapped out. We made a present school an athletic facility like this, and we then used that so that we wouldn't have an interruption. Do we have the authority to use that property to build an educational facility at some future date? And or would that violate the Nassau County's accessibility stipulations that they've placed on us? So that's basically my question. What other stipulations do we have and placed on the school district? And what are the freedoms that we have with that property in future years without restraint from Nassau County? And thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Hi, Shawnee Park, Two Wood Court, Syosset, New York. Thank you so much for the presentation. This is so much, I can understand so much better by being here. My question is, I understand that the building idea was canceled due to too much cost, but if we have outside source of money coming in, there was somebody in Facebook who suggested giving naming right to Amazon. If something like that happens and there's more money coming in, would the building idea still be available? Because I'm saying this because if the facility is there, athletic field, it's great, and I would like to see all district residents to come and enjoy the facility, not just people who are playing sports, like senior citizens coming in indoors and use the facility during the daytime, regardless of what the weather is like outside. So I was wondering if that was considered. Thank you.
Hi, Mike Provins, 240 Berry Hill Road, Syosset. Very excellent presentation. It's, I think it's an extremely exciting opportunity that really, you know, I can't believe we actually have the option to do at this point. That something like this happens to come up with 35 acres right across the street from the school. The first thing that really came to my mind is, you know, everything that was discussed is only one part of it, but just think about what this does to our property values in the community. I mean, anyone who comes to look at this town to buy a home and you see this incredible state-of-the-art facility that we could have as part of the school system, that could only enhance not only the betterment of our kids, but the property values of all our homes as well. As in Syosset is also already known as an excellent educational system, but this would only enhance. It would be looking at like a college campus when you come to visit the high school and take a look at it. And we truthfully would go from one of the worst facilities in the district in Nassau County. I mean, I travel around. My kids play a lot of sports. To state of the art, probably the best facility that in the whole county. And some people brought up some concerns in regards to the cost and the ongoing maintenance. It's, you know, in the grand scheme of the budget, it's not $350,000. It's a number, but it's not an enormous number. But that could certainly be offset by the busing cost of moving people around, kids around from school to practice. And there's also ways, if, as you mentioned, when it's not being used by the school or by the local community clubs like Syosset Soccer, Lacrosse, et cetera, that are going to probably pay some level of fees. I mean, there are, on Labor Day or Columbus Day weekends, there are tournaments that go on there that would then be incredible revenue generators as well if we have the ability and the desire to auction that off or to collect fees for that type of stuff if it's not being used by the local community. So, and someone had brought up the point, well, why are we rushing to do this now? I think it's just because the opportunity is here right now, and if this for some reason doesn't pass, well, then what happens to this? I mean, who ends up buying it? I mean, it would be much better to be owned by the school district and be for our kids and for the betterment of the community as opposed to somebody else. I don't think it could ever go to necessarily a builder, but can you imagine what a builder would pay for 35 acres in North Syosset? It would be a lot more than $7 million. So, especially with the final piece that we have debt that's retiring and we can roll this into lower interest paying debt. The pluses far outweigh, in most people, in my eyes at least, the potential, any of the negatives that have been raised or brought to question. So that's my 2 cents.
Hi, Neil Weinstein, 19 Leonard Road in Syosset. Thank you all for your time and for a lot of answers tonight for a lot of questions that we had. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for the town. And I just want to make a point of making sure that we're exploring all opportunities and different opportunities for the land. We're adding $10.5 million, which the bulk of the expenses for turf fields. We got turf fields around town. We've got room for turf fields between the two schools. We could add some more turf fields here, but that's a huge cost for more and more turf fields for ball sports. There's other things that other kids in this town can appreciate. Pump tracks, skateboard parks, the theater, which seems a little blip. The theater's a great idea. Do that, make that a big part of it. I think all in all, it's great that we're doing this, and it's a great opportunity, but make the most of it, do something a little bit different, add some fields, add some other stuff too, is my thought for the town. And be more inclusive for more things than just lacrosse and baseball, because a lot of kids couldn't care less. But add that too, there's room, especially with all the facilities. Questions, I do have questions about access to the preserve and to make sure there's people that use the preserve at all hours and the only real access is through, and it's just concerns about whether, because it's school district property, if gates are going to be put up for after hours or closed so that people can't get to. People go before the sun comes up with lights, they ride their bikes and they run in there, and at night, because that's when they can do it, and they love it. And to make sure that's going to be preserved, and the use will be preserved through this when the school district takes over. Thank you.
In a classroom, we call that wait time. So I've asked Ms. Williams to just collect any questions that came in through the online portal. If they were redundant to questions that were already asked, we're not going to repeat them. But if there's any new territory that was covered, she's going to feed them to me from the microphone, and then I'll try to respond to everything that's come so far.
What is the expected use of the fields between school activities and non-school activities? What percentage used by non-school district residents? And if the money is being spent by the district for this project was redirected into the schools, how could it be used?
Okay, thank you, everybody, for all those questions. Really thoughtful questions. I won't argue with the comments that say it's a lot to take in. It has been a lot to work on. It is an opportunity. It's a unique opportunity, and that has presented some unique challenges along with it. And I'll try to respond to everything that I can, and I'm sure that I'm going to have to take a couple of these questions home and work on them a little bit, but this is a school district. We love homework. So that said, first, Ms. Sergi's questions. There are 11 properties in the district. The smallest property in the district is about 8 acres. That's Village Elementary School. Probably would not be possible to do any development there. The largest property in the district, ironically, other than this campus, is the largest of the elementary properties is actually Walt Whitman. It's about 20 acres. But most of those 20 acres are wooded acres that are behind the school. It's a very hilly property. It's hilly in front of the school, and then it's hilly behind the school. And so removing those trees and trying to level that ground out would actually be just prohibitively expensive. The next largest property is Bayless, which I believe is 17 acres. And that's actually used quite a bit right now as the fields for local soccer teams. We have seen the fields at Willits get used a little bit by local teams as well. It also has enough size and enough level ground that you can kind of get one field in there. But really it's the secondary schools that have enough space to use. And so then the question would be, if you had the opportunity to develop your existing acreage and reduce the amount of land that you have, or develop different acreage and not reduce the amount of land you have, and that's the choice we're being presented with. So my own thought is that the opportunity of being able to develop more acreage leaves you with more flexibility on the properties that you do have. Depending on whatever happens in the future, you still have your own property to work with. What about other kinds of investments in the district? Classroom trailers. We did eliminate 3 classroom trailers here on the high school campus, the ones that house the weight room. There's some other trailers here on this campus that are used for alternative school at the high school. At some point, those are going to have to be addressed. And there are, as part of the Phase 2 project, which is now finally starting to come into its final stages, there's some more repairs, a lot of heating and ventilation work that's being done in the more recent wings that are constructed at the elementary schools. And we kind of nicknamed those portables. They're not portables in the same way as the buildings at the high school. They are permanent structures, but they do require attention, and we've been giving them some attention. We have been spending a lot of energy over the last 5 years working on the facilities here. And when I arrived 7 years ago, I saw that there was a lot of work that remained to be done with the facilities here to make them match the program that's going on in the classrooms. And will there be an after-school conflict? I think I addressed this in my initial presentation, but I'll just revisit it if it wasn't clear. Most of the associations time their events to start after the school events have ended. So they're sort of conscious of when we have kids in practices. And then as Mr. Cronin pointed out, the less time kids are on buses, the sooner they get done with their practices here and are available to do other things in the community, whether piano lessons or if they're going to go play soccer somewhere else. Mr. Moriarty, you asked about whether the operating costs would be offset by the usage permits or payments from organizations like Syosset Soccer. Syosset Soccer did notify us that their executive committee has pledged $50,000 a year towards the operating expenses of the campus. So we certainly appreciate that. It didn't ask for it, and didn't ask for that from any of the other groups, although it is possible that they may make similar decisions. I don't want to. I think it's wonderful that that was done as a voluntary gesture, and it may be a voluntary gesture from others. I do think that over time we're going to need to look at the pricing structure of those usage permits. That's a part of this that I'm not as familiar with yet, and so I've got some work to do there. I think there was a point made a little bit later on about the potential for using the property for tournaments and other kind of revenue-generating opportunities. I think that's a great idea. I don't think like an entrepreneur, although I wish I had that kind of a brain, but I do think that those are possibilities and opportunities that we should absolutely entertain. Mr. Moriarty, are there savings that we'll have as offsets for busing and other kinds of costs? On that, I'm going to turn to my left and Dr. Rufo, who is in charge of busing and in charge of paying for busing. So she'll have a sense of some of the offsets that we think we might be able to recover to offset that operating cost.
I think there are certain shuttles that we run that we would not have to run, certainly. Some of the shuttles that we run are part of our 4 or 5 hour service, so it wouldn't be a direct savings on those. But there are certainly, particularly on the athletic shuttles, ones that we operate that are based on hourly rates, and we would see savings in those. And Drew and I can work together a little bit on that if we want to quantify that further.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to quantify that further, please. And then last question, what do you do about cost overruns? How are those managed? As I mentioned in the presentation, I do think that we have an advantage in our back pocket, which is that we have a lot of flexibility in terms of time of year of when the construction would occur. So when we've been bidding out HVAC projects, we find that the ones that we bid late in the spring have very high pricing because we're getting close to the summer construction season. The ones that we bid in an earlier time frame, in the February time frame, we've gotten more competitive pricing. So I do think that time of year makes a difference with this sort of thing. But what happens if there are overruns? Often you'll see the Board of Education here will reject bids and rebid. Sometimes we'll do value engineering. Sometimes we'll do some scope changes, whatever's necessary in order to try and get the costs to remain within budget. In the pricing structure that I illustrated earlier, there's a very large contingency, larger than you might anticipate for a project like this, and it's for exactly that reason. We'll do some soil borings, and if this moves forward, obviously, I'm not going to go dig up somebody else's property, but if we do take ownership of the property, we'll do some soil borings and make sure that we know what we're dealing with. It may be that those contingencies are unnecessary, but there are some very large contingencies just because there are also some unknowns there. Ms. Schultz, thank you very much for the information about the traffic light at Jackson and St. Edward's School. Certainly we would want to work with county and town officials to see what recommendations that they would have. We would invite them to do a traffic study, and we would trust their expertise on traffic to give us advice about what might be the most advantageous way of keeping everybody safe at that intersection. Ms. Ahern, thank you for your comments. We did, to your point about the proximity of the neighbors and trying to be attentive to them, we did email for everyone that we had an email for and snail mail for everyone we didn't have an email for. All of the people that are proximate to the park living in the residential street on the north side, which I believe is Woodland, and on Southwoods Road, all the way up to Cold Spring Road, to invite them to a conversation with us. So we sent all of those out. We didn't hear any responses, so but we wanted to make sure that they all were personally invited if there were some issues that they identified with the property. And to your point about the parking and entering and exiting traffic, certainly part of the reason for holding these meetings is to take that kind of feedback so that we can incorporate it into our future planning. That's helpful to us, so thank you for that comment. I don't often leave at the time when that coming and going is occurring. Usually I leave later. But I did see it the other day this week, and I see what you're saying where they're exiting and entering in the same entrance, which is the southmost entrance to the park. And I think since there are two exits there, and one's an exit only, the northern curb cut is an exit only, it probably makes sense to reroute traffic so that the northern is an exit only and the southern is an entrance only, and then you'd have a lot less competition, because what I observed there is that you've got Pell Lane, School Road, Chelsea Drive, right next to it, the entrance to the developmental center and the park, all there in exactly, kind of within 50 yards of each other. And so trying to rationalize that traffic flow probably makes a lot of sense. And so I will add that to the drawing board and talk with the engineers about that. And then your comment and others' similar comments about trying to make some emphasis for the arts. We've tried to be attentive to that with the idea of an outdoor performance space. So I think that there are also arts needs in the school district as well, and certainly we want to be attentive to those. We've, again, done a lot of work improving the school facility. We spent some time on, at the high school in particular, on science rooms, and we're spending a little bit of attention on the technology rooms in the middle schools. So also doing a lot of work on bathrooms in the middle schools, but there are things in the schools that absolutely do need attention. Mr. Elitzi, you're welcome responding to the questions. Yes, we will own the property after it is transferred. And I would liken the arrangement to an easement. So it is not atypical for properties to transfer with easements. And so I would see this as being an easement that transfers with the property. So the one easement that transfers with the property is that we have to honor the existing use agreements. Another easement that transfers with the property is that we have to permit ongoing access to Stillwell Woods, which is behind it. Another easement that transfers with the property is that it has to remain in perpetuity as recreational space. So to answer your question, I don't think that it would be consistent with that easement for us to construct a school building there. But by not constructing turf fields on existing properties, it does leave that space on existing properties available if the exact scenario that you described, the need for swing space presented itself, or the need for new construction because of enrollment increases presented itself. But that particular property would not. And so, again, kind of to your point, that's why it's a good location for putting turf fields, because that can't really be used for much else but turf fields, whereas the high school property could be used for that or more. Ms. Park suggested ideas about selling naming rights or what would happen if additional revenues came. So the creation of the indoor bubble space was an idea that we came up with. One thing we also struggle with is indoor athletic space. I think of our neighbor to the west has about half the students and about twice the indoor gymnasium space that we have. So at some point, I'd like to revisit that conversation, but I don't know that this is the right property to do that. Although creating an indoor space there would have created some options, it is a little too far from the high school to really be the place where you go for sixth period phys ed class. You'd waste a lot of time just in transit, and it wouldn't be ideal in the winter time. So even though I remain interested in trying to increase the amount of indoor PE space, it's probably not the best place to do that. Yes, part of the reason why there was at least an attractive idea to float out there initially was that it reminded me a little bit of the facility that's at Syosset Woodbury Park, which gets a lot of community use by seniors, an indoor place, a meeting place. I thought of it also as a place that is outside of a school building where we could hold budget votes. So I would reduce the amount of community traffic that was going through a school building on a school day, just again as a security and safety idea, but that alone is probably not enough to justify the construction of the facility. Mike, and you said your last name so quickly I didn't quite get it, and I fear that I will mispronounce it if I attempt. Yours were mostly just comments, so I don't see any questions that I recorded here. Mr. Weinstein, thank you for your comments. And thank you for the suggestions and ideas for other things that could be added to the property. I appreciate that. Hadn't thought of this skateboard park. It's an interesting idea. I know that when we started sharing with the instructional staff here, folks on the curriculum and program side of the organization, they were coming up with lots of ideas, and that's where some of these ideas for the sensory trail came from. And so the advantages, since we can use this property for recreational uses, and there are parts of the property that are still undeveloped in our existing plans, we can think about what future uses might be. So I appreciate those ideas. They're really creative. And as I mentioned earlier, we are certainly looking at other kinds of improvements that need to occur in the school district for the arts programs and other things. So that's to be addressed at some point in the future, but certainly on our radar screen. And then lastly, your question about ongoing access to the preserve, that comes under this idea of the easement. We're not going to change the access to the preserve that exists currently, so people who use it because they get up very early in the morning to get their ride or their workout in before they go off to work would still be able to have access to it. And the online questions will require a little bit more research. I'm not sure that I could come up with a proportion between school and non-school use. I think, for me at least, it's easier to think of the fact that the time frames don't overlap necessarily. And then, again, what percentage are non-residents? I would have to ask the individual groups that currently have all of the existing use permits, because I think they are the majority of the people that are using the property, and what percentage of their membership are not Syosset residents. And I don't know that they're under any obligation to share that information with me. I think that's probably the only way that we'd be able to answer that question. And then lastly, what if we directed the money towards the schools? You could do $10 million worth of work in the schools. I would want to go through the building condition survey to identify what are the priorities and needs in the building condition survey. That's how we built the project list for the phase 2 construction projects. But off the top of my head, I don't know which are we just did the second round of building condition surveys. We did one in 2015, and we're in the process of doing one right now. So we would take that building inspection that's done by architects and engineers and then start to look through that list. So that's round one. If anyone would like to come back and have an additional 4 minutes at the microphone, now's your chance. And I'll wait for a couple of seconds, and if not, I will graciously say goodnight to everyone. Okay, hearing none. Thank you all for your time and attention. Have a good night. Get home safely.